So yeah, thanks for coming out. My name is Zack Cruisins. I'm from the North Shore of Lake Superior. That's not the Minnesota North Shore. Way up above maybe where a lot of people don't really think about going, but it's a wide world of exploration. So I live in Red Rock, Ontario, actually. It's between where I'm operating a lot of stuff, between Thunder Bay and Rossport. But this is a story a little bit about how I've got a lifelong love and passion for this place on the Canadian North Shore of Lake Superior. And I've traveled and paddled all over the world, and I keep coming back here because I think it is truly one of the most beautiful places in the world. And how I got instilled with that love is kind of what I want to kind of share with you guys in hopes to inspire people to just kind of live their dreams and live their best life enjoying this beautiful planet we're on. So I'm going to start with this quote because this quote really resonated with me. It's from a book called Superior to the Haunted Shore. This is the book. But with the speed of motorboats and the ease of access, something vital and intangible has been lost. Perhaps it is the zest for life felt when real danger lurks near, a zest which sharpens all perceptions and experiences. Although the islands and their surroundings have not changed appreciably in the last few centuries, our view of them, our appreciation has. Ease has diminished them when less is risked and less is gained. So I read this book. It talks, these guys, Superior to the Haunted Shore by Bruce Littlejohn and Waylon Drew. They traveled through this area in a canoe and just kind of photographed and told stories and journaling about their travels and stories and reflections of this place. And that quote resonates with me because it's really hard to get to this area. And you have to kind of take an extra risk. You have to kind of jump out of your comfort zone and go. So not necessarily taking like a reckless risk, which I might have done in my stages of development of learning how to be a sea kayaker over the last 20 years. But this quote really resonates with me because it gives you this zest for life when you work hard to get out there, especially under human power, and you just get enthralled with the zest that is overwhelming. And I haven't found it too many places in the world as I have on the Canadian side of Lake Superior on these trips in this beautiful group of islands. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the first time I went sea kayaking and my background. So I've been kind of working as a guide now. This is like the 20th year that I've been professionally kayak guiding, but just before I got into guiding, 20 years ago, I had a connection in Thunder Bay to get kayaks, and they were beautiful Neki Chatham or Neki Oahu kayaks that I wish I could still get now. And me and my friend just chucked them across the ice in April, and we paddled all the way out the McIntyre River to this island and just camped for the night randomly and paddled back the next day. And we had no dry suits, no radio. We didn't tell anyone where we were going. We went out in April in the ice, and we just went. We didn't check the weather. We luckily had good weather, and we went out, and it kind of like it scared the shit out of me. And I'm almost shy to tell people that I was this dumb to do this sort of thing. But and it resonated. It woke up with me. So this is me and my friend doing this trip. We had to line boats across the ice to get out, and we didn't know how far we're going to go. I'm like, oh, let's go to that island. It looks like a pie. Le Pâté is the high point on that island, and Saint Germain, a French voyageur fur trader, actually signed an affidavit that he saw a mermaid off that island. So it presents this aura and mystique, and it's also the feeling that you get when you get out there. You're like, oh wow, this is like an eerie place. What's going on? And Dave Clements is in the top corner here. He was an inspiration of mine as well. That he actually helped us get the kayaks and went, and then he scolded us for going, and he didn't really know how far we were going because we were going to just go paddling and then come back, and we just kept going. But this, I remember, is a really memorable trip because it really eye-opened me, and I realized how lucky I was because 2 years later, there was another a girl I know that was in that. I went to the Outdoor Recreation Parks and Tourism program at Lakehead University in Thunder Bay, Ontario. And another colleague of mine decided to go with another friend in a canoe even later, like in May, and tragically passed away. And that opened up my mind, opened up my eyes like, holy crap, what the hell did I do? Am I influencing other people to just go out there, and I'm like, I need to do, like, I dedicated my life to like learning everything I can about this lake, and so I can teach people about it and tell people to make good, safe decisions out there. But this is just like a awakening experience to me. But it was so close to the edge, almost too close to the edge, and too much good luck. But it really put it in the right position here. So this is Lake Superior. It looks like a wolf's head, and it can change in its moods. We were lucky; we had pretty calm weather when we went out on that trip, but it can change in a heartbeat, and you can get fog and rain and wind and of all sorts just rolling in, and you can see big storm fronts moving in, and you can see big waves that can really stir up into some weather here, and it's magnificent to watch. But you don't want to be out in it and exhausted without the right gear and right equipment. You want to make good, safe decisions, right? So if you know what you're doing and you have good stamina, have some experience, you've done some skills training and stuff, you can get out and paddle in some decent sized weather and conditions, you know, and it might make you sick. I have had people throw up out of kayaks before, but you have to kind of go out there and experience it and learn by experience. And then afterwards, you feel that zest for life because you get out to these magnificent places, or it calms and you get a beautiful rainbow, you know, that's just amazing. The gifts that the lake keeps giving, and then you get the beautiful calm days where it's just flat as can be. It's like glass as far as you can see, and you're like, wow, this is heaven on earth. So it's an amazing thing. So after this accident I heard about, I ended up getting a job in Rossport, Ontario for a small outfitting company, Superior Outfitters, owned by a guy named Dave Tamlin, who was one of my inspirations. I'm going to talk a little bit more about afterwards. I lived in this trailer with no power, no running water. I didn't really have, my only sea kayaking experience was I did that trip that I talked about, and then I went out and I did like a skills course, and I learned some basic stuff that was like paddle cannon level 1, 2 ACA, whatever you guys understand, like pretty basic, not really even tripping skills stuff. And then I'm thrown here to guide trips, and there's so many people, maybe even some people in this room met me that summer doing trips, and they kept coming back over and over again. And I just like, come look at the map. I want to learn about this place, because I'm living in this small town. There's like 50 people that live there, and it's 2 hours from Thunder Bay, the biggest city of 100,000 people, and like half hour to the grocery store even. So you're way out there. And I just got enthralled in this group of islands, and I spent all my time out there just exploring and getting to know it. And this inspired, hey, I got to do something. I got to do a school project to learn more about this. And this was actually drawn by a student that was on a trip that I'm going to talk about, some of my trips, student-led trips I've done out in that area a little bit, but it depicts, it's a little map that should be a publicized tourist map of that area, but the small town politics make it a little bit tricky. I can talk about that, it's a whole other talk. But I started taking people out after that summer alone in Rossport. I was like, I just want to take all my friends out there, and I knew I had access to kayaks, and Dave was so gracious to give us a good student rate to rent the kayaks. And we went out, and I made better decisions here. We were a little bit more prepared, and we picked good weather, and we even had like a boat ride out to one of the islands so we could be out there and be safe. And we had wetsuits and paddling jackets and the safe amount of stuff that we could get on a budget at the time. And we're going out in like October and April, like on the long Easter weekend, and the Thanksgiving weekend. Canadian Thanksgiving is in October. So we're spending our time out there. And the three friends with me and Jess and Aaron in the middle, we got inspired to be like, hey, let's do a really long trip out this. We've been gifted so many gifts from this great Mother Superior. We want to spend time out here. And how can we do it? How can we just spend our whole summer out here, loving life on the lake, but also give something back, make something more meaningful? And I was doing a school project, like I was doing a directed study with my friend Daryl Macon, who I ended up writing a whole book on the area with afterwards to plan and execute a big trip. So in the making of this, there's this water trail draft plan. I don't even know, this is signed around the Canadian North Shore, but it's the government that manages a lot of this area. I'm working with them to see what establishes coming down. But we looked at this water trail that pretty much goes from Thunder Bay to Sault Ste. Marie. And it's an amazing route. It's like 1,500 miles, 400 kilometers of coastline. And we're like, oh, that'd be amazing summer. Let's spend our whole summer just paddling from Thunder Bay to Sault Ste. Marie. And I'm like, well, what are you going to do? We're just going to paddle. It's like, oh, that would be great. But I really wanted something more than just paddling. So in 2007, Stephen Harper, the Prime Minister of Canada at the time, came up to Nipigon, Ontario, and he announced the Lake Superior National Marine Conservation Area. It's still kind of not fully established, but if it once fully established, it will be the largest freshwater marine protected area in the world. Just wanted to make sure I got that wording right. And it's a massive area that extends right out to the U.S. border. Out to a place called Lake Superior Shoal in the middle of the lake, which I'd love to go fishing at someday. It'd be amazing. But that whole area just seemed like an area to concentrate on. I'm like, hey, there's no information about this. And I was living in that trailer with no power and no running water. I couldn't find any information on the area. So Dave Tamblin was like, hey, why don't you write a book in the area? I'm like, that would be great. Awesome. I'm going to start doing that. And my friend Daryl had already kind of started doing that through a school project at the outdoor rec college program, university program in Thunder Bay. So I kind of took his notes and I talked to him, and he kind of mentored me on how am I going to guide trips. And he had to cancel guiding a trip for Dave that summer that was throughout this whole area. And I actually had to do it with no experience kayak guiding. And luckily I went with 3 lawyers from Thunder Bay that had a plentiful supply of beers and fed me quite well as I was cooking them dinner, and only he managed to spill it once. But it was a learning experience to kind of learn how to paddle properly and learn how to guide and learn about the area all at the same time. It was like overstimulating, and that challenge and that really pushed me over the edge to give me that zest for life and appreciate and lifelong love for this area. So I was like, okay, I knew this area and I want to do a school project. I want to give something back. I want to like write a guidebook or do a master's thesis, honors thesis, whatever I could do. So all through my university career, I was looking at what I can do. So I came up with this thing called the Lake Superior Research Group, LSRG, at Lake Canadian University. It's something that would hopefully continue on with other school groups, and it did for a while. There's still some school projects going on, but I'm always in the energy space to kind of keep things going with it. And myself, Jess, and Aaron, we did 3 different projects while we were out there for 50 days. So I did a directed study and campsite analysis, piloting Ontario parks with the Ministry of Natural Resources, a standardized campsite inventory form that has been used since in every single Ontario park managed park, the provincial series parks in Ontario, and now it's used. Now they have drones and fancier things to make it even better. I can only imagine having a drone at the time of doing this. I got really addicted to drones and photography. You'll see some of my shots after here when I did it, but I had to hand draw it and walk and pace the sites every day and complete this campsite form. And Aaron was looking at human impacts and coastal sensitivity. And Jess was looking at risk management for paddlers and some of the decision-making processes and big crossings and how we interpret the weather and be safe out there. So it was kind of a cool combined collaborative effort with a prof at university named Rob Stewart and my friend Daryl Macon and my friend Ken Storm, who's here in the room as well. Some mentors and people that have helped me out over the years. So here we are. We even got we coined that Lake Superior Research Group. We sent out sponsorship packages and got a local outdoor store and had access to Delta kayaks. And we're like, oh, there's this new kayak that's thermoformed, and they're 18.5 feet long. These massive expedition boats. Let's get 3 of those. They're 520 or 360 gallon. I don't know. Some enormous, the biggest sea kayak you can get on the market for expedition. And we managed to fit all that stuff in the boats. And we went out and we had a good time. This is Rob Stewart, our professor that helped support us. And we did some fundraising events and fundraised and got some support for equipment and just like to pay for everything, so we didn't have to pay out of pocket because we were students at the time, which was fantastic. And this is one of the results of Aaron's thesis, where he looked at human disturbances, and we looked at areas of impact. So areas that people have camped, areas have trampled on, or areas that have sensitive lichen heath communities and Arctic alpine disjunct plants, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. So that's just like I'm not going to go into too much detail, but that's a distribution of it in that island archipelago. And this is the 63 campsites that I mapped out and did forms for that have evidence of people being used or should be developed as proper campsites. And and that's a map of it. So the laser pointer here. So just so you guys know, on that 50-day trip, we started in Terrace Bay, Ontario, which is right here, and we paddled out. We packed for 10 days worth of food. We paddled the shoreline out to the edge of the National Marine Conservation Area right here, crossed to the Slates, paddled around the Slates, came back, shopped again for a week, then paddled to Rossport, met a friend, and he came with food for us. We paddled around Rossport Islands, and then we had a couple other friends join us, paddle around Simpson Island, to Pace Plat, First Nations, and then we got another food resupply. We paddled the whole Nipmuc Bay shoreline to Red Rock, Ontario, just in time for the Red Rock Folk Festival. Happens every August. It's an amazing festival, and we got resupplied food there. And then we kind of went on another trip around, circumnavigating St. Ignace Island all the way around. And then we got a food resupply at a kind of public sauna area out here on a friend's sailboat. And then we did another paddle down this coast and got another resupply in these islands, and then we finished at Silver Islet. So it was 50 days. We did about 5 resupplies, and we paddled, I think, 715 kilometers, whatever that is in miles. It's in 50 days in one area that we could easily paddle in a week. So it's a different perspective, going deep, instilling this lifelong learning from this amazing experience. So I have a little video clip of a 15-minute video that I have on YouTube that you can Google and watch if you want, or you might have already seen it. But just to kind of highlight the feeling that we got from this incredible trip experience. So I want to make sure it plays if I do that. Yeah, okay. This is an old school video with the Sony Handycam in 2008.
This is definitely one of the best things I've ever done while here at university. The chance to have been involved in designing this project and enabling ourselves to spend our entire summer out there paddling on Lake Superior doing research for our undergrad. It's definitely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But I think the biggest thing I took away from it was the rhythm of those waters, of this place.
We certainly had our fair share of paperwork with our research, but I couldn't possibly think of a better classroom. My campsite forms and journaling I completed along the way allowed for me to inventory, record levels of impacts, and provide future recommendations. Superior is a very awe-inspiring place. Each experience leaves me with a thriving zest for life. I just can't wait for the next opportunity to get back out there.
Everything's interesting. The rocks are interesting. The plants are interesting.
Oh yeah, the North Shore of Superior is like one of the largest volcanic episodes of all time.
I don't know how many times I've been out with my friends and I start talking about the lake, and I can see them, they all start rolling their eyes one by one, and it's just because that's all I ever talk about. That's all I ever talk about.
There's mysteries out there that can hardly be described. All you can do is experience them. When you're out there, that place just imprints itself upon you. And those rhythms, they'll stay.
So yeah, that's a little clip from that. And so yeah, that time out there spent really inspired a lot to continue pursuing this area, and just the landscape, it's rugged mountain landscape. It's amazing how many people I get from the Pacific Northwest that come up and want to do trips on Superior, and they're like, oh, that's not a mountain, and then they go paddle out here and go hike up, and they're like, yeah, no, that was a mountain, because it's real proper wild, rugged country, and it's hard to navigate, especially if you go inland in some of these islands. And the geology composition is like a time machine from 2.7 billion to 1 billion to how it was created by glaciation, like even 10,000 years ago, So just amazing. I got a lot of photos I'm going to just show through because the photos kind of speak wonders and of how wonderful the bedrock of this area is, and the different views you can get along the coast. And this is like for all the Canadian North Shore, just beyond, not just the area that we did this research project, but just going all around. It all has the same stuff in common. Amazing sea caves similar to your guys' Apostle Islands that you can kind of paddle through and explore. But the geology, most of it is Canadian Shield country. That's about 2.7 billion years old. It's kind of like the main bedrock. Even comes through and touches this area a little bit too of the Great Lakes. And so that's like the main composition. But then you got like Gunflint Formation that's got stromatolites and cyanobacteria, some of the earliest life forms known to man. And in the 1950s, there was a gentleman who discovered, it was like the first fossilized evidence of this that was discovered. So it was a pretty great find. And this is near Scarborough, Ontario, just on the Canadian North Shore. And this is dated to be about 1.9 billion years, these fossilized stromatolites. So when you see this with your own eyes and you're like, wow, this is like fossilized life that's on this coast of Superior, it's just awe-inspiring and continues that theme. And this is just showing all the different tectonic plate movements that also combine here too. And the white is the Keweenaw Rift that I'm going to talk about here a little bit more, and it's about 1 billion years old, or 1.1, 1.2 billion years. This ancient rift valley that went through Lake Superior essentially and up the UP, you call it, Upper Peninsula, Michigan. Is that what this baby is? This guy's UP? Yeah, it goes all the way through there. And it does like an upside down U. So it's quite fascinating, and you can see the processes here, how there's volcanic formations and then glaciers that spent 2 million to 10,000 years on top, and then you have the lake fills with the melting of the glacier, and you have the Great Lakes. And that process is amazing. I'm not going to get into too much detail with it, but just showing like this is the Canadian side. You got the older Canadian Shield rock, bedrock, and then you got sedimentary rocks and igneous volcanic dike protrusions, which make really interesting photos when you can really see that in real life with the clarity of the water, and it goes way underneath. It's amazing, you know? So this is where big volcanic dikes that you can paddle along and really get the grandeur of this place. It's just like, wow. It's absolutely amazing. And the little protected coves, the hidden coves I can go and find, and it's just surrounded by these big diabase walls. And then they make arches that you can kind of deke your way through, but they're slowly crumbling over time, right? And looking at it from above is just a wonderland, a playground for kayakers, you know? There's so much amazing stuff to see in and around here, you know? And this is just like another geology map showing how different it is. So this is the Rossport Islands, and most of this is all kind of volcanic, and you can see the protrusion here. And then you got evidence of sedimentary rock from like an ancient riverbed. And it gets pretty complex with the geology here, but it just adds to the wonder of how fascinating this is, how we can continuously put the puzzle pieces together. And it's a never-ending learning, because there's nowhere else really I've seen such complex and interesting geologic formations. And the columnar basalts, it's like Giant's Causeway in Ireland, if anyone's been there, and a few other places around the world. They have some interesting, Iceland I know has some, and Antarctica has interesting formations like this too. But hey, it's right on Lake Superior, and you can paddle right up to it. You can even jump out and climb around it if you want, if the weather's good. Quite cool honeycomb formations. But just like lava, just like form that. I'm always like wondering how, going back through time, right? And all the big outer islands here that are all kind of volcanic base provide some of the most stunning campsites imaginable, and you feel so lucky when you get out to this place, and it's such a nice day. You can't just like you can't even fathom that, you know. It's just so amazing. And the glacial history, like 18,000, 20,000 years ago is when this started retreating. It covered all of North America, right? And it's just a stunning process of how this melted and how young it is, considering it started melting 20,000 years ago. And 20,000 years ago, it was about 2 miles thick, the ice on top of the Great Lakes going up Hudson's Bay and all of this, right? So the processes and the scouring that happened from the melting of the glaciers is fascinating. And I just wanted to show the Great Lakes system profile here, because Lake Baikal here, you can just see it. It is the largest freshwater lake in the world by volume, being incredibly deep and incredibly old. It's 25 million years old, compared to Lake Superior just being like not even 10,000 years old in the Great Lakes. So it's just interesting to see the differences in that. And a fascinating story with glaciology is Louis Agassiz. He wrote this book about the defining, kind of proving, help supporting the theory of global ice age. in this area, and he paddled the whole Canadian North Shore, finding evidence. So he visited like beaches like this that have like an erratic that got. How did that get there? What moved it? Some fluvial movement had the power to move that and scrape it along the shore, and with ice and isostatic rebound, kind of rebounding up, you get like different scouring features showing this. There's evidence all over this these bedrock and volcanic formations here from the glacier, but as evidence from the past way before. And then you got different stages of the melting where you had big lakes up like Lake Nipigon Way, north of Lake Superior in the Sixth Great Lake, and even up to Lake Winnipeg, Lake Manitoba, where there's a glacial Lake Agassiz that eventually flooded and started creating the Great Lakes as it melted, and then there was a period in like 2 to 7,000 years ago where so much water was flowing in, the lake levels were going up, and then there's combined with storm events. And this is a depiction from Louis Agassiz's journey of Terrace Bay, Ontario, the shoreline, and how there's like lake terraces there that are kind of evidence of storm events over the years, right? And now there's just amazing like lichen heath communities and lines on some of these beaches that really show kind of the history, right? And you can kind of like walk through time and see that when you go through here, and that when you can get the images, you can really see that the profile of how there's different time periods of these, right? And then in amongst those, if you can see carefully here, there's a couple Puckasaw pits hidden amongst those, and these Puckasaw pits and lichen heath communities are just kind of a remnant from the past, and I'm going to touch a little bit more on that when I talk about the human history in a couple minutes. But the lichen heath is like an Arctic alpine type plant that grows on these rugged, cold environments, and the trees are small, like they get the Krumholtz effect because they don't have much nutrients, so they're like windswept and burned. Yeah, and then we got Arctic alpine disjunct plants. We got the Devil's Club that's found in the island. That's in Pacific Northwest. If you ever go hiking there, you've got it in your hands, I'm sure, and it's unpleasant. But it's found in the islands. We got saxifrage, we got harebells, we got butterwort insectivorous, and then we got crowberry, like kind of grows in exposed areas but really sheltered. All plants that come from the alpine or the Arctic environment that grow on the Canadian side of Lake Superior. Because it supports that microclimate, which is quite fascinating. And then there's the Slate Islands, probably one of the most magnificent island archipelagos that has a whole story of its own, how it was created by 450, like a meteorite impact, some 450 million years ago. A meteorite about 32 kilometers, 20-something miles in size, struck the area at a speed of 20 kilometers per second, plunging 3 kilometers into the Earth's crust. Sorry about all the kilometers. I got to convert that for you. But you can get the picture. It's pretty fast, pretty powerful, and it created these. And there's actually kind of shatter cone formations there. A lot of it's kind of hidden under the rock here. And then there's a remnant herd of caribou that go through a boom and bust period every 8 to 10 years, and now they're kind of just starting to come back a little bit more. I'm seeing more evidence of them, but they're almost completely wiped out. And there's been tremendous efforts relocating caribou from Michipicoten Island to the Slate Islands, which is like, for me, I'm like, wow, it's crazy they're doing that, but they're trying to bring the population back, and slowly but surely. This is one named Woody back in 2008 was like almost tamed, and I think people fed it, but they had no predators, so they just kind of adapted to eating everything, and it was quite the experience. And yeah, this is some of the, like, this is like a breccia geologic formation underneath, but a lot of the rocks are kind of that shatter cone type evidence. And there's like a large shatter cone. I don't actually have a photo of it in here, but it's like apparently the largest shatter cone around that's out at the Slate. So that's just really fascinating. And then there's also this Dryas integrifolia is a Latin name for mountain avens that grow out there, and they're endemic only to this area and quite sensitive to human disturbance. So this is part of what Aaron was doing on his 50-day trip, identifying these plant species and distribution and how impacted they are from people camping, people going out, because some people might not think about it. But it's sensitive, right? All this whole area is really sensitive. If you've traveled out here, you know what's going on. And blueberries, you guys are familiar with this berry. It's a scrumptious snack if you're out there, and if you're lucky in a good year, right? It goes up and down. So with climate change, there's a bunch of changes in the environment, and and you don't know how good it's going to be, but when it's good, it's good. You got to enjoy it. And I think that brings me to like the connection with nature and wildlife. When you're traveling slow, like we spent a very slow amount of time going through one area, we got to connect with nature and see moose in the wild and kind of connect with them and the loons and eagles and where they're finding out where they're nesting, you know, like kind of going through the same areas and monitoring the nest. Are they breeding this year? Are they not? Is the nest there? Or did a tree blow it down, which happened last year for this particular nest, and it's not there anymore? Seeing young eagles kind of in the stages of development, and then otters, and seeing family of otters kind of in the same spots as you go back and forth, revisit places, and it's just amazing familiarity over the years, going back and again, how connected you get to the place with the beavers, and you go into little grottos and coves, and once in a while, you just, one time I saw a beaver just there. I'm like, wow, it's just hanging out, just chilling. And bird life, if you guys are into birding, like I got into birding the last couple of years so much. And it's just amazing in the spring when the different species of warblers that frequent the area, and then the cedar waxwings, just beautiful birds, and then the breeding cycle of like blue herons that are nesting out there, and even the herring gull and the mergansers, and this is I think there's like 32 or 34 babies. I don't know if it's all from the same mom, but this is like, wow. How do you, it gives me that sense of wonder. Like I'm like, wow, how does that, is that just like a ducky daycare, or is that one mom had all those babies? I don't know. But it's amazing how they've adapted to that, and they're prey for eagles too, right? So a lot of them don't even make it this big. But it's amazing to see some groups. I saw a photo of like, I think it was in northern Minnesota, actually, somewhere on social media, and there was one that had like 70 babies, and I was like, what? I thought maybe it was made up, but I don't know if anyone's seen more. And pelicans, white pelicans, frequent some areas of the Canadian side. They like Nipigon Bay, Black Bay area, where it's a little bit shallower, warmer, and then they go inland through migration routes. Peregrine falcons, they like to nest up there. I've been monitoring this nest every year near Rossport, where they're nesting, and just being able to interact with this. And I know there's what's a Project Peregrine with this company called Northern Bioscience with Brian Ratcliffe that was going out there for many years, monitoring all the cliffs where these guys were breeding and nesting and going and rappelling down and being like, are they there? Are they not? It kind of struck my interest with this bird, and now every time I see a peregrine, I'm just like, wow, it's an amazing bird, fastest flyer. And just like the spiritual connection with Anishinaabe and our ancestors that used this area for many years, Getchigami means the great waters. And I'm just inspired by the legends and stories, and like the legend of Nanabuju and the sleeping giant, and some of these places here. And this image here, some people might recognize this. This doesn't exist anymore. It's since collapsed. This photo was from like 2017, I think, on a trip on Lake Superior Provincial Park. But it's just an example, and this is another quote from Little John and Drew, the power and fragility, the immensity of the landscape opposed to the astonishing resiliency of the delicate plant and animal life, and the humbling insignificance of human record beside that of the rocks of Lake Superior, 10 restless millennia against 3 billion somber years of existence. So it's a fragile environment. You're blessed every time you go through, and maybe you see this arch, and then you come back, it's not there. Some people might be familiar with this. This is at Sleeping Giant Provincial Park, closer to Thunder Bay. And this is called a sea lion. It used to have a head that resembles a sea lion. My photo kind of cuts it off, but years ago, it has a little plaque there. It shows. And any year, any winter, one big storm can come and knock it down. And it's not there anymore, right? This is a sacred rock, Shamanitu. It's not there anymore. It's since collapsed off Edward Island. And then there's mysteries of how storied these landscapes are, and how I create my own stories, even spending time out here. And this was on our 50-day trip in 2008. I saw this rock stack. I've since been through here maybe a half dozen times off this island in Rossport, and I haven't been able to see it. I think it collapsed or disappeared. Or maybe it's still there and we just missed it. The lake didn't let me see it. I don't know, right? That's the mysteries of it. And then the little people, the Mamaguishi, we always talk about, like, oh yeah, the little lake tricksters, are they going over there, they're going to steal my fish? And the Nipigon River pictographs resemble the Mamaguiji, the lake trickster that is said to steal the fish from the fishermen in the Nipigon River. And there's a whole legend. I'm not going to try to tell the legend, but it's just that it's there kind of brings power and meaning to this place further. And then the Agawa, Mishipushu, the great lynx, and other mythical creatures that traveled through here with the canoes. And this is a more accessible, easy access off the Lake Superior Provincial Park coast that still kind of tells those stories from the past. And then we got the Pucksaw pits that I brought up earlier. Like, they don't really, a lot of this history has been sadly lost. They don't really know what they were made for. Maybe they were used for vision quests because they face the south, and like for watchmen to keep a watch out, or for young men to go and fast and challenge themselves at that coming of age. Or maybe they're used as like fish weirs, or maybe they're used for hunting. I know there's some more on the Minnesota coast that I've seen that are kind of up off the riverbanks that are in the forest that are depressions, and then maybe they waited there for like a deer to come. But they're kind of all over the Superior coastline at those different lake levels with like Aquaplano and Terminal Woodland, early inhabitants that went through this area. It's just it's sadly lost. There's not a lot of that history. There's speculations, but it's fascinating to know about these places, but then also respect them. And one way you can kind of connect with those the Anishinaabe and the First Nation Ojibwe that traveled through this area and have communities along the way is to go to their powwows. You could probably travel along the Canadian shoreline of Lake Superior and you go for a powwow every weekend. There's a different powwow where they get together and celebrate and sing and dance, and it's quite amazing. So also we have the Métis people. I was a part of a trip in 2017 where I paddled from Ottawa Kenora over 4 months in a voyageur fur trading vessel, a Montreal canoe, and we went to different events and did Métis jigging dancing, and that's the voyageur canoe. It's another magnificent way to paddle these waters and just connect with the Métis, which is one of the 3 Indigenous groups of Canada. So you have First Nations groups, you have the Métis, which is mixed First Nations and French fur traders, and then the Inuit in the north. A lot that are the official 3 Indigenous groups in Canada. So it's cool to kind of have access to this canoe for festivals and events and tours, and live and camp underneath it even. And yeah, just enjoy that way of traveling on the water with the camaraderie of other people and singing and dancing. And on a trip, we actually found a voyageur fork that we brought to an archaeologist, and I think it's dated somewhere in the 1700s. Most likely from that day, that era. You know, it's just like, wow, is it from there? I don't know, but it looks like an interesting fork. So yeah, just more like using this canoe and kind of, I like this photo because it shows like the with the modern, like the lake freighter with the voyageur canoe traveling with the shadows and cool events and festivals. So then we got movement into industry and the ghost town of Jackfish. And then probably one of the most expensive tracks of railway on all of Canada laid in here. But it's amazing to kind of go in and take in the power and energy of that place and the stories of the ghost town there. And also some of the artists, Lauren Harris and Franklin Carmichael, Al Casson, and Tom Thompson, traveled up by rail car along Lake Superior, which they should have a passenger service. I'm trying to get that to happen. So you can go have your morning coffee leaving the terminal in Toronto, or leave the terminal in Toronto at midnight and wake up having your morning coffee on the North Shore of Lake Superior, right? But it hasn't happened yet. It's just only for freight only. But then it brings problems. But the group of 7, I'm not going to touch too much about them, but another powerful way to bring meaning to this landscape that was inspiring to us planning this 50-day trip years ago. And when you travel slow and you paint and depict, it's another way of reflecting. But with the railway comes problems. Anyone know about these? This is plastic nurdles, plastic beads. They use to mold things. In January 2008, there was a train derailment, and the emergency company didn't really know what was in them, but they had to clear the track to open it so trains could keep going. Pushed it off, fell off a cliffside at Cavers Cove near Rossport, fell into the lake. In the summer of 2008, we saw all these beads everywhere, and it was kind of disturbing. We still find them on some beaches, and I've even heard accounts in Marquette, Michigan, that people have found them on the sand beaches there. So because they travel around the lake. But quite amazing. And this amazing boat, Tug of the North, actually went out that summer for a couple summers with vacuum cleaners and vacuumed up the beaches and made a huge difference to try to eliminate a lot of that. But they're still there. There's no way to fully eliminate those plastic beads, unfortunately. And then there's remnants of the past from old sawmills, fishing barges. The commercial fishing and logging industry was so, natural resource extraction was crazy. So it's pretty neat to kind of paddle up and see some of these places and kind of take a walk through the past. And then we got the Silver Islet mine, commercial fishing, and the big whaleback barges that early stages of the iron ore industry moving stuff around the lake. It was like this industry with the coal docking. But Jackfish was the town that they eliminated because when they switched to diesel engines from the coal. So it became a ghost town. So that's an interesting place as well. But then commercial fishing switched to sport fishing once the lamprey kind of wiped out. If a lot of people aren't too aware about that, they wiped out a lot of the fishing on the area, and they've since made a comeback with lampricides and protection. And now there's still plentiful fishing out there, and it's exciting when you catch a fish from the kayak. Silver Islet mine from above now is just kind of sunken ruins. The Nanaboot, I'll answer questions after here. Sunken below here, and it's a quite amazing, powerful experience to paddle over the mine shaft. And now cruise ships are visiting the area only so many times, not too much, which is good. But it's kind of brought some revenue and resources to this area as well. So I'm just going to talk quickly about the Lighthouse Trail through here, because I know I am running out of time. This whole trail here, there's just amazing human culture and interesting stories of the past through the lighthouses. Canadian Lighthouses, Lake Superior has made them more accessible. Obviously, they've only gone so far. But Porphyry Island's an amazing one. We got before and after restorations. They've done a lot of work putting money into Porphyry Island. So that's one you can get to if you wanted to. And then we've got Trowbridge Island. We have the number 10 island on Shaganosh. We have Lamb Island Light. And then we have the Lighthouse of Dooms. 3 lighthouse keepers died in 6 years just getting to and from this lighthouse. So they wiped it out. And that one is like way out on here. So there's no lighthouse there. And then we got Battle Island, which is amazing. This is the last lighthouse keeper, Bert Sasko, in 2006 when I was out there. He was still out there. One of the last living lighthouse keepers that spent time out there. And Mission Cotton Island, obviously East Light and Otter Island Light further along. And then the human culture of Narivia. There's a whole presentation on this with how they fishermen created as like a makeshift sovereign nation with interest to protect it. After I did my 50-day trip, the people that kind of managed that land use permit, because it's like public crown land, they offered me to take it over because they didn't have the resources and energy. So like, do you want it? I'm like, I don't know. But since then, I've been kind of overseeing it and using it, and there's a whole series of other kind of cabins and saunas that have this culture of going out there, but they fly a flag, and it's kind of to relive that. And with the Lake Superior Research Group, I've done multiple university trips out there where we've dug new outhouses and cleared trail and kind of given back to the lake in a little ways, a little bit. So that's been really good to do. And they painted this way back in 2009. And this is my friend Daryl, who's been one of my main inspirations. Me and him eventually, after 6 years working on it, published this, and we've done 4 editions since, always updating because it's always changing. A paddling guide out of our love for the area. And my good friend Ken Storm, which is here, he's also a private steward of some property in Rossport's, kind of taught me of looking at the world in a different way and having a little bit more reverent restraint and being really passionate about those little details in the geologic world and the plant world. So it's amazing to have Ken's support over the years. And my good friend Rob Stewart's professor at the university helped support that 50-day trip with us and everything we've been doing together. But of course, Dave Tamblin sadly passed away of cancer in March of 22. But he's a great inspiration for me and spending time in that area and helping us plan our big trip. So I have to just commemorate him. And as the seasons change, you can keep paddling out there. The fall is a beautiful time with the colors, and then the winter with the ice, and just the perspective that you can get when you look at it from above, and it has a whole different meaning. Some people that don't know it might look at this image and be like, "Whoa, I don't know." I don't know what that is, doesn't mean anything, but once you've paddled out there slowly, these group of islands are embedded in your soul. And it's like nowhere else in the world I think of Lake Superior, and I miss it if I'm away. I've paddled all over the world, and I keep coming back here because it is just second to none. So I'm just going to go back to this quote because I think it's for people to kind of push their limits and think about getting good value out of where they travel and what they do to try to, and I want to share that passion and inspiration for you guys to kind of think about that and everywhere and anywhere you go. So thanks a lot, guys.